Welcome to Struggles of a Spirit. I'm your host, the Reverend Udell, and I'm glad to be with you again today. We've had some tape programs recently, but now we're back to a live show, and I'm glad that that can happen, and that we have our guest here, Shane Bowie, to talk with us about mountaineering and his experiences in the mountains. So some of you have done mountaineering, climbing, hiking, walking, exploring, all kinds of things in the out of doors, and Shane has a lot to say about that. But remember, this is public access, and that means we want to have you participate in it, not just to listen, but to participate and to ask questions, to make comments, to give contributions that would make the program more enlightening. So you can call us up and talk with the station manager, Bill, at any time. You don't have to wait for a special moment to do that. And the phone number of the studio where we are and where Bill is on your TV screen. If you look down at the bottom, they give the phone number that's connected just with our studio. It's not the channel's phone number, it's the studio's phone number. And then if you're listening on a day when we're already have no program going on, just a taped program, you can add your own contributions by using your own email address and to email us what you want to say. We have an email address that's visible on the screen. Use that address, and then we'll get back to you with our thoughts about what you have to say. So anyway, whether we're live or whether we're taped, we want your feedback. So call us and please be in touch. Well, Shane, it's good to have you here.
Thanks, good to be here.
And excuse me, sleepy.
Well, let's hope the subject we're talking about won't be quite as sleep stimulating.
Well, mountaineering is stimulating for me always. So I'm curious about why people climb or hike, and maybe we ought to start with talking about that subject, and also whether we're talking about climbing, rock climbing, snow climbing, or
Ice climbing.
whether we're talking about just walking in the woods. I feel you can do any of the above. You don't have to just be doing something fancy and difficult. What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with you that you don't have to do anything fancy or difficult to have a great time in the outdoors, that you don't have to be an expert rock climber, mountaineer. You don't have to fly to exotic locations around the world to climb, although if that's your desire, go for it. It's certainly there available for you to do. Anything is possible, especially in the world of mountaineering. If you want it bad enough, it certainly is there for you to undertake. We're lucky to live where we live, in the Green Mountains, given that we've got the Adirondack Range to the west and the White Mountains to the east, and both comprising pretty good-sized mountain ranges to train on, or to have a good time on, train, whatever, so that you can get ready for more exotic locations if you'd like. In fact, a lot of great mountaineers actually train on Mount Washington to get ready for Everest, K2, Annapurna, McKinley, Denali, whatever.
Why don't you tell the public why they do that? It's little old 6,000-foot peak in New Hampshire. Why would they train there, preparing for K2 or Everest?
Mountains around the world share common characteristics of an alpine Arctic terrain ecosystem that has the same elements of snow and ice and wind and rain and changing temperatures of warm to 20 below, same treacherous terrain. So they all harbor similar conditions. And it's common sense that before you undertake a large project on a large range or a higher peak, to test your gear out on a smaller peak so that if you get in trouble, it's not as, the stakes aren't as high, certainly on top of Mount Washington as they are on top of K2 or Everest or Denali or wherever you happen to be. Even in the hood, in the Cascades, certainly some pretty, some problems can certainly develop very quickly. One of the best places to start out, actually, your equipment is right at home. If you've bought a new winter sleeping bag and you want to check it out, well, when it's 20 below, you go sleep on the back porch. So if the system that you have fails, you can walk in the house and recover very quickly, as opposed to when you're 20 miles out and you're on the side of a mountain and you have no other options. You certainly would want to check your gear at home on the deck or wherever outside. In fact, it's a good idea to always, like for example, with tents, it's a really good idea to go into a dark room and shut off the lights and see if you can set up the tent. Practice setting up the tent without the use of lights or any kind of aids. If you can feel the setup of the tent, so when you get to the top of Mount Washington or Mansfield or wherever, K2, it doesn't matter. It's a rote procedure, and you can simply do it without having to think about it. So you can create a shelter for yourself very quickly under, harrowing conditions, so to speak. Because it'd be even better if you had a big fan blowing on you the whole time, so you could mimic the wind. I don't know if you ever tried to set up a tent in the dark when the wind's blowing 50 miles an hour on top of it's 20 below zero. Believe me, you want to have the skills to do that, and you want to be able to do that very quickly. So doing it closer to home makes sense. You just want to practice before you go out and find out the hard way that, hey, that tent you bought, that sleeping bag you bought just isn't cutting it for you, and you're shaking and you're sleeping, you're shaking so hard you can, barely stand it from pre-hypothermic conditions. So that can happen anywhere. That can happen in Burlington. It can, you can check out your gear before you head out. Mount Mansfield's certainly a great place to try stuff out, Mount Washington certainly. I suspect someday we'll see a permitting process on Mount Washington due to the number of problems they've had there in recent years with rescues and casualties and so on and so forth. It is a pretty active rescue operations going on there, pretty regular basis with problems, people going in there. For example, people will drive up from Boston, and college kids with shorts and T-shirts on and a couple of bottles of water and some candy bars and say, let's go to the top of Mount Washington, and they drive up to Pinkham Notch and they park the car and they go shooting up Hillman's or wherever trail and get to the top. They're all sweaty, and next thing you know, they don't have the right gear and you're hypothermic, and it's the middle of July, and that's when most hypothermia cases occur, is in the summertime, more so than in the wintertime.
So tell the public about hypothermia. I don't think people realize how serious that is.
Yeah, it's a very serious condition. More so in that, as the symptoms develop of it, your decision-making process is altered or flawed in a sense, so that as you lose blood flow to the brain, and the body goes into survival mode, you oftentimes don't have the ability to make clear decisions because your state of consciousness has changed because of the onset of the symptoms of hypothermia, with the shaking and the numbness and the loss of mental faculties, and what's your name, where do you live? It's one of the first tests for rescuers on a hypothermic victim, and if they can't answer the question, then you know that blood flow to the brain has been jeopardized, and there's a serious problem looming on the horizon. The treatment and so it's a very serious condition. It does lead to death, coma, unconsciousness and death. The old school of thought on treating hypothermia was to get in a bag, get a sleeping bag out, and lie next to the person that's suffering from hypothermia and share your heat with them. that has been examined and found to be flawed in that what typically happens in hypothermia treatments such as those is that you end up with two cold bodies. And the one person that needs the treatment is not being treated correctly. So what they have you do now is they have you make a human burrito. So you get out a sleeping bag with an emergency space blanket, and you wrap the person that's suffering from hypothermia into the burrito, so to speak, as we call it in the rescue business, and so they can recover their body heat. And then, depending on the circumstances, either send for help, some fluids in them, keep them monitored, and get them out as soon as you can. Evacuate as soon as you can. Of course, evacuating from the mountains is a very difficult undertaking. It's better if it doesn't happen. For example, it takes on average an hour per quarter mile of distance to carry somebody out. So 1 mile is 4 hours worth of work to transport a person out of the mountains. So if a person's 3 miles in, you do the math. It's it's all day to get somebody out. So that's not something you want to have to undertake, which is why anytime you go into a wilderness area, you always want to have enough food and gear to be out for 2 days, so that if you do run into problems, you have the ability to take care of yourself. That's just a given rule. And of course, the whole letting somebody know where you are, when will you be back, not changing your plans, sticking to the route. That's all very important, so that if I'm going out solo or if I'm going out with friends, I don't recommend going out solo into the mountains, first of all. But if you're going out with a group or with a friend that your spouses or friends, a close friend knows, this is the route I'm going to be on. If I don't call you by X time this night, then you know that I've run into a potential problem, and the authorities should be contacted if I'm not out. So if I'm going up the Emeritus Trail on Mount Washington in the middle of January on a Friday night, on a Friday during the day, and I'm supposed to be out by noon on a Sunday, if I don't call you, then you know there's a problem and I might be having difficulties out there. Yeah. So that's a really smart thing to do, and not to mention that. Gee, it gives you a certain measure of comfort when you're out there, knowing that somebody knows where I am, what route I plan on sticking to, when I'm going to be coming out. So if I do have a problem, then I know that there's someone that's going to be looking out for me.
Well, what do you think about people who go hiking or even climbing and don't tell anybody where they're going?
I think that's a risky proposition at best. I think it's a dangerous thing to do.
I know some people who did that, and they wouldn't even leave a note on their car.
That, time is, in a rescue operation, time is of the essence. If no one knows where you are, when you're supposed to be back, by the time a rescue operation can be launched, you may be dead. Certainly, if somebody gets lost in let's say somebody just went up Mount Washington, how many routes are there up Mount Washington?
Oh.
And their car's parked at a trail, a junction of 5 trailheads. Which trail did they take? Where'd they go? It's just common sense. It's just really smart to do that. And not to say that I have gone out solo. I always will, but I will have very clear directions and plans with folks at home about where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be back. Is that recommended? No. Is that a risk? Yes, it is. But let's face it, Lee, the whole thing is about risk. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. Because men and women like to go out into the mountains, and they like to come back, and they like to have known that they survived.
That's true.
That is what it's all about. If it was all about safety and no risk, people probably wouldn't do it. It would just be, it's the certainty. It's the uncertainty that makes it exciting. Not the certainty, it's the uncertainty. It's you against nature. And that's what I like about it, is that you've got everything you need with you, so that you almost, in a sense, it doesn't really matter where you are, because you've got everything you need to take care of yourself. And I believe one of the outdoor companies used the logo or the slogan, it doesn't matter if you're, it it doesn't matter if you're lost, if you don't care where you are, so to speak. You just, you can be anywhere and take care of yourself. And I like that. I like the freedom of that. And that's probably one of the primary reasons why I like to do mountaineering, is particularly winter mountaineering, is the challenge of the environment, being comfortable in that. And the beauty of it, of course, is inexpressible by words.
You usually have somebody with you?
Usually, yeah. Yeah. It's, as I'm getting older, it's tougher and tougher to find folks willing to go out. My latest adventures in the wintertime have been largely around backcountry skiing, telemark skiing, wintertime mountaineering skiing with telemark setup, and staying over the night in a tent, in a mountaineering tent. So that involves a lot of careful planning. Route choice is really important. Everything looks different in the wintertime than it does in the summer. As anybody who's climbed in Mount Washington, let's say even Mount Mansfield here, our local mountain, going up Sunset Ridge Trail, very popular trail, in the summer, it looks very, very different in the wintertime. Very, very different, and it's easy to take a turn. Also, a wrong turn, the light is different. It takes longer to travel in the wintertime than it does in the summer, a lot longer.
And you can slip and slide a long way.
You can slide a long ways. You don't have as much light as you do in the summertime, so you're spending a lot more, you do spend a lot more time in the dark. And the sun does set early and the temperatures plummet very quickly. And you aren't allowed a fire on most mountains. So your systems, as I say, your system, by that I mean the gear that you have, if you need a fire, then your system has failed you. In mountaineering, if you have to build a fire, that means that the system you're using is inadequate for where you are. So your gear has to be good. It has to be expressly perfect for.
Those two guys who were out in the Cascades, I think, 2 winters ago, they went off. They were supposedly well equipped and knowledgeable, and they never were seen again, were they?
No, they have not recovered the bodies.
It was strange how they.
Both experienced mountaineers. Not sure what happened there. I think they got split up somehow. I believe they did. There's speculation that they did build a snow cave and seek shelter. I'm not really sure what happened there. If they ran out of food or what goes on. That's another good point too, is that in the wintertime, or anytime you're mountaineering, you can have the greatest gear in the world, the greatest goose down jacket, the greatest shields, windproof stuff, without adequate calories going into you. You have to eat constantly because you've got to stoke the furnace, because that is the source of heat for you. You have to eat twice as much in the wintertime as you do in the summer. And so what I do when I'm winter mountaineering is I have pockets full of power bars and little Snicker bars and all kinds of stuff that I'm constantly consuming to keep my body warm, so that I can maintain my body temperature and stay comfortable out there. So you have to eat continuously. And another key thing that you do in the wintertime for mountaineering is you drink your food. So you find a sports drink that has calories in it. And so that as you're drinking and hydrating, you're also getting calories from the water that you're ingesting. And there's a lot of products out there that help you do that. So that's a good thing to do. And like hot Tang is one of my favorite beverages. I really like Tang. I like it heated up. It goes right to your core and spreads warmth all through you. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
I used to drink Tang, but that was years ago.
Yeah. Well, warm Tang is one of my favorite. What I do is you take a Nalgene bottle, which these days is evil because it's made of plastic, and you fill it with hot Tang, and then there's special insulated bottles, holders you can buy now, that you put it, and I strap it right here to my shoulder straps, and I put that hot Tang right here, and it's in a special holder, insulated holder, so it can't freeze. So I'm drinking hot Tang all day. Then when I'm done at night at base camp, I melt snow or purify water and replenish those guys. And I put it in a nice hot thing, and then I take it to bed with me. and I put it down at my feet to help keep my feet warm, that nice hot bottle. Feels really good. And I put that next to my pee bottle that we've talked about before. What do you do in the wintertime, or what do you do mountaineering? What do mountaineer guys do? They don't get out of bed and go out and pee. That's just a dangerous thing to do. You have a special bottle in the bag, sleeping bag with you, and you kneel, and you pee into it, and it has a good lid, and you screw it on, and if you get up and go outside your bag to go outside to pee, you're going to lose so much body heat that you're going to come back to your bag like this, shaking like a leaf, and lose all your precious heat that you've worked so hard to hold on to. So it's best just to use a pee bottle and make sure it's shaped differently from the bottle that you drink from, because you don't want to have a mistake on that, and I know people who have. So you don't want to drink your pee 2 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, so that's what, and people have actually gotten up to pee it in the night and fallen to their deaths on Everest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard that.
yeah, they go outside with their goose down booties on and slip and fall and die. So it's the simple things like that that you just don't think of stuff like that.
Being dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. So gear has improved greatly. There's a lot better stuff out there. There's a lot of moisture in the Northeast when you climb, so that I prefer a synthetic fill versus a goose down fill. Goose down, when it gets wet, is largely ineffective. Synthetic pile, when it's wet, it will still keep you warm. It'll still retain its loft factor, as we call it, and still keep you warm. So I recommend around here to purchase a synthetic fill, heavy loft jacket, for warmth and so on, mittens and the whole. And I teach a class through one of the local colleges about how to dress for winter sports.
Do they ask good questions?
Yes, they ask very good questions. I actually start out with 3 classes of different themes, and then followed by a field trip to test out in the wintertime, to test out what they learn in the class. But we start out with base layer and moving on, and we deal with it from a physics standpoint of how you lose heat through your body. There's 3 ways you lose heat. You lose it through convection, conduction, and evaporation. So we talk about how to control those 3 factors. And so conductively, you lose heat through your feet into the snow, because the snow is pulling the cold snow is pulling the heat away from your foot. How do you deal with that? You create a vapor barrier. In fact, I use one of the key things I use, and this is funny. I was talking about a friend about this the other day. Is an antiperspirant on your foot, on your feet.
Really?
Roll on. You roll it on your feet. Keeps your feet dry. They smell nice, and you don't sweat in your feet. And water conducts cold 20 times more efficiently than air.
Wow.
So you want to make sure you keep water control. And your body's always creating water. As you know, you sweat. You're constantly giving off water vapors. In fact, you lose about 6 quarts of water, 4 to 6 quarts at night when you're sleeping, which is why the inside of the tent when you wake up in the morning is all covered with frost inside. That's water from your body leaving. So anyway, so you have nice dry feet, and so you lose that conductive layer of water from your feet, so your feet will stay a lot warmer. Not to mention that if you're stuck in a tent for 2 days, your buddy's not crying about how bad your feet stink, because you've got a nice anti-perspirant deodorant on your feet. So that's one of the tricks of the trade. And everybody's different too. That's another thing about clothing, is that when I'm climbing and I stop, I require a lot of lofty gear on right away. I need a nice heavy synthetic fill jacket with a hood, heavy polar mitts, maybe, and I need to hunker down and eat and drink lots of fluids and hot fluids. Whereas I have a friend who can stop and he doesn't need to do anything. He can just sit there for whatever and do whatever he needs to do, and he doesn't have to put anything on. But I have no body fat, so I die and he lives, so that's, everybody's different when it comes to gear. So that, getting back to the convectionary conductive evaporative heat loss, you've got to know how to, your body produces all the heat you need to stay alive. It's just a question of how do you contain it. For example, I talked earlier about the kids from Boston come up, they go up Mount Washington in the summertime with cotton t-shirts on, so the cotton gets really wet from the sweat going up there. And then all of a sudden the wind's blowing like crazy, and that's called convectionary heat loss, where the heat your body's creating is being whisked away by that stiff breeze. And so then you start to get hypothermic. So how you control the convectionary heat loss is with a windshield. It can be nylon, plastic, it can be a trash bag, it doesn't matter. You'd be surprised that once you've gotten a layer between you and the wind, at how much warmer you become. So a lot of folks, they get to the top of a mountain, they're smart, they bring a windbreaker, they put a windbreaker on. It makes a huge difference in how they feel because they're not having their heat whisked away by the wind. And that's called convectionary heat loss. So, that's how you control that.
Now, the early Everest climbers didn't have equipment like that, did they? They just had wool.
Yeah. With, I believe they had anoraks, though.
They did?
Yeah, with, that were usually a heavy material that were windproof that they could put on. But compared to what we've got today, you're right, their stuff was very primitive, the wool mittens. Wool's excellent. It's warm when wet, which is one of its outstanding characteristics. However, it is heavy, and it takes a long time for it to dry. So, having said that, I do have some wool stuff that I really like. I have wool liners on my mittens I really like, and they work really, really well for even today. But and some people can't tolerate the itching. I don't know how you did with that, right? You
Didn't bother me.
didn't bother you at all. See, it doesn't bother me either, but some folks it would. The latest and greatest stuff is capilene, polypropylene. It comes in a lot of different, every company seems to have a different name for it, but it serves the same purposes. It's usually it's a synthetic material. Cotton kills. When I'm mountaineering, I don't have any cotton in my gear, and I don't have any cotton on. Even my underwear is made out of polypropylene or capilene or something else that cotton holds water like you wouldn't believe. And that's dangerous because, like I say, water conducts heat 20 times more efficiently than air. So when you got wet stuff on, you want that water, you don't want that water against your skin, which is what capilene and polypropylene does. It acts as a vehicle. It transports the water to the outside surface of the garment you're wearing. So it's not against your skin. If it's not against your skin, then it cannot conduct your body heat away from you. You can hang on to your body heat. And so, which is why when I'm climbing, you'll see me with my base layer on, and my whole outside of my body in really cold weather will be covered with frost, white frost, but I'll be nice and toasty inside. And that's where the water is supposed to be, is on the outside. Then I brush it off, and I put my outer gear on, and I'm all set to go. One thing you don't want to do, especially if you're just starting out, is you don't want to nickel and dime your gear. This is serious stuff. Your life's on the line. Don't buy cheap stuff. Buy good, high-quality gear. Yeah, you're going to have to spend extra money for it, but you're going to get more value for your dollar because it's probably going to last you the rest of your life, and it may actually save your life. So
That's serious business.
that is very serious business. Like the tent I have a very expensive tent. Has a special floor in it. It's 4-season. I don't have to put down a ground cloth or anything when I pitch it anywhere.
It's not a heavy canvas.
It's not a heavy canvas. It's a very thick nylon, for lack. It's not really nylon. No, I forgot the term for it, but it's a special material that stretches in different ways. It was very expensive, but at the same time, this is my shelter from the outside. And if it's 20 below and there's a blizzard coming in, I don't want to be in a Kmart tent. You know what I mean? I want to be in something that's going to withstand the elements. And so, and same with my sleeping bag. I'm not going to stay in a Boy Scout $5 cotton batting sleeping bag, I'm gonna stay in a really lofty. Now I keep using the word loft. What I mean by loft is the space, the fill between
Right.
your body and the outside air. The thicker that is, the more heat you can retain. So if you've got 4 inches of loft and you've got 12 inches of loft, the 12 inches of loft is going to be so much more warmer than the 4 inches of loft because there's so much barrier between you and the outside air. So my sleeping bag, which is rated for -40, has a lot of loft. It doesn't weigh hardly anything. I pack it into a stuff sack, I open it up and it goes boom, and it lofts right up. And I can climb in that thing, I don't care what's going on, provided I've eaten enough. That's not, like I say, if you don't eat enough, it doesn't matter what you got because you're going to be cold because you don't have any calories to burn. So, and that was expensive, but it's going to last me for the rest of my life. One of the cool things about winter camping and mountaineering is that your gear looks brand new all the time.
It doesn't look worn out.
No, it doesn't look worn out, and it doesn't get dirty because you're not putting it in dirt. You're putting it in snow,
That's true.
and snow is clean. So, your stuff stays really clean, but even though it's been through the ringer a few times. And then you have to have a good system for boiling water.
How do you do that?
There's a lot of different stoves out there now. There's canister stoves I really like that you just spin a canister on, natural gas, flares right up, boils water in less than 4 minutes, which is really nice. Or there's, white gas stoves. You have to be careful of that. You might have to have some paste with you to get it started, but there's all kinds of great systems out there. And there's a stove called a Bibbler stove, in that you actually can cook inside your tent. It actually hangs.
What does it hang from?
It hangs from a chain from the center of your tent, and you can actually cook inside your tent, provided you have, of course, enough adequate ventilation, both ends, with a good breeze coming through for the carbon monoxide gases, which is odorless, colorless, tasteless, and so you have to be really careful about that. But I've actually been out where, with the stove going and making some tea or whatever, it's very, very cold outside, and you're actually inside the tent in a polypro top, and that's it. Huddle in your bag, really cozy, and the tent's like beautiful, nice and warm. And I always eat gourmet, by the way, when I go out. I don't eat crap. I eat really good food, and I spend the extra money for gourmet food. And the reason I do that is because it's just a lot more fun to
What
to
kind
have,
of food?
I like smoked salmon on a baguette, sliced baguette with red onion, capers,
Whoa,
little
okay.
cream cheese, things like that. Smoked oysters. That stuff is really good to eat, and so if it's really good to eat, you're going to want to eat it. Because a lot of times after physical exertion all day of hiking or climbing or whatever, you really don't feel like eating. You really have to force yourself to eat. So having something that you like is really key. People bring gorp and so on and so forth. The hotter the food, the better it is for you, and you're constantly drinking hot chocolate and tea and stuff like that. Alcohol is not a good thing. It dilates blood vessels and will make you colder. And then you always have in the wintertime, you always have a backpacker towel in the tent with you to get water as soon as it is created from
Now,
snow.
I've heard on some of the Everest climbs, they're always talking with a radio with a base camp somewhere. Is that traditional now?
Yes. Yeah. Base camp, of course, is like a potential rescue
Right.
operation. It's a stable place to go to, of course. And constant communication between the climbing party and base camp for the status of everybody, the health of everybody in the party. A chain is only, there's a saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Same with a climbing team. If one person's health is jeopardized because of high altitude pulmonary edema or cerebral edema or something like that, then the whole team is jeopardized based upon that one individual having a problem. So that if a person's having a problem with communication with base camp, we're on our way down, so-and-so is going to walk them out or whatever. That's really important information to know. Plus, of any changing conditions on the mountains, rumors coming into base camp from other climbing parties in different areas. You know, the Italians were over on this face and they noticed a storm system that looks like it might head this way. I'm going to give you a heads up about that. So that's the whole purpose of the communication between base camp and the climbing party. And that's standard procedure now.
It's amazing to hear it.
Yeah, there's usually a physician, usually a doctor also involved to try to help people out with the symptoms of altitude, with the problems associated with altitude sickness, which is a big concern. Of course, people do die from bleeding in the brain or pulmonary problems you know, it's funny, it's not the lack of oxygen that's the problem. People think it's you go to the top of Everest, there isn't any oxygen. There is plenty of oxygen. It's the pressure that's not there. So that the same volume, you're not getting the same volume of air on each inhalation as you would at sea level. So that's why on high altitudes, your respiration goes way, way up as the body tries to get the oxygen it needs to an increase of respirations. Because there's not enough pressure, therefore there's not enough oxygen molecules in the air, concentrated as it was, because of the lack of pressure. So, and that creates a variety of symptoms that doctors have written books about and studied, and you know, Ed Vestier has spent a lot of time with that, studying the effects of, and there's a Vermonter, also a doctor in Vermont, who many years spent, his name eludes me at this point, but spent many years studying altitude sickness at UVM and the treatment for it. So even on a local level, we have people here who have close ties to Everest. Jeffrey Taubin, a local eye doctor, who, well, he moved to Salt Lake City a few years ago, was helping out with the Tibetans in their eyes, and he's been on Everest a few times, but he's a local optometrist, really nice guy. He lives out in Salt Lake now, moved out there, so and likes to climb in the Wasatch Mountains, which I visited last year, and a wonderful place to climb, great place to ski, great mountains, just great mountains. And big snows.
Let me ask you the question, that why do people climb? A basic question.
I suppose, you know, whoever you asked would always give you their own personal experience of, for me, it's, there's something about being out there that it's hard to find the words that match the experience of being out. I said earlier, I do enjoy being self-contained, being self-sufficient, being challenged, and uncomfortable at times. There's a certain degree of discomfort. I won't say suffering, because it's not really suffering. There's a certain degree of discomfort at times with cold, fatigue. But I guess the reason for me, because I have to answer it from a personal level, it raises the value of everything else in my life when I return from the mountains. The hot shower that I've taken every morning for every day of my life for the last 15 years feels a lot different after spending a week backcountry skiing and living outside. The hot shower has a certain value now that it didn't have before, as does the warm home that you walk into and your family, and the warm food that you eat.
You don't take things for granted.
You don't take things for granted. You understand the value of things. Your level of appreciation goes through the roof. You're so grateful for everything. And in fact, and that doesn't mean you're not grateful for the experience you just had either. You're very grateful for that too, because they kind of are, it's a symbiotic relationship in a sense that the returning to the home and the culture enables you to go out into the wilderness. And it's nice when you're in the wilderness to be able to return to the culture and the home. And so they each have a value to them. And I think that they add value to your life. You never really, people say you never realize the value of something until you've lost it.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's absolutely true. You just have a lot more gratitude and appreciation. And as much as you try not to forget that, as time rolls by and you go to work again and days go by where you're going to work month after month after month, you kind of forget how wonderful that hot shower is because you do it every day and you take it for granted again. And then you go out in the woods again and there's gone, and gee, I can't wait to go home and drain the hot water tank, as we used to say in mountaineering. We'd get done our trip and we'd get the car and say, okay, now let's go home and drain the hot water tank. Because you'd stand in the shower for 15 minutes just enjoying the hot water pouring over you, which is an untold luxury. It's the most luxurious experience in the world to be able to do that. And to feel so lucky to be able to do that here. And then having a cold beer or hugging your wife or kissing your kids, it's priceless. It really is priceless.
It's what life is about.
It's what life's about. And then it sets you up for the next trip out, And it's difficult to come back sometimes. The adjustment, the come back to society is difficult after being out for a long period of time. First of all, the first thing you recognize is that there's a lot of noise. Much of it seems unnecessary. There's a lot of frantic activity too. When you're out in the mountains, it's pretty basic. It's your basic needs need to be met. You need shelter, you need food, you need water, warmth, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much it. You get back here, there's other concerns, your kids' grades, the bills, the list goes on and on. You're stripped down to the bare essentials in the mountains. And in fact, what happens over time is that you actually lose some of your issues, some of your sense, some of the I problems with the I. This is my problems in my life, that has a tendency over time, the longer you spend out in the woods, that goes away, and you're filled instead with a certain reverence and silence that was once filled by a lot of internal dialogue and noise based upon what was going on in your life at that time. When you first start out, you still got the crazy chattering voices in your head the first day, 2 hours, and over time, things start to quiet down there, and you become a little bit more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
You get in your body more, and you're more grounded in your life and where you are. And life becomes a lot easier and a lot simpler and a lot more enjoyable.
I'd like to hear some of our viewers
Yeah,
respond to what you're saying. No one has called in yet. Give us a call. What do you think about what Shane is telling us about? It's kind of foreign to many of us, not to all of us, but to many of us. What are your thoughts about mountain climbing, risking your life, going off in the woods, living dangerously? Give us a quick call. You can read the phone number.
Yeah, 651-0589.
Give us that call.
Displayed. Yeah, give us a call. See if you have any questions or.
651.
Yeah, 0589.
0589. We'd like to hear from you.
So that folks are particularly struggling a little bit more now in our culture than they have in the past with rising fuel costs and in a sense, we're talking about having adventures in the mountains, but life is an adventure. We don't even have to go in the mountains,
It is.
But never has there been more a time or more of a need for people to really reconnect with that which really sustains us. I know Bill, who's in the camera room there, has talked to the Must Hike, and he's mentioned he's been up, he certainly has his own reasons for being out there. And, like, it's worth going out. It really is, even if it's just for a few hours. Just take a walk in the woods. Doesn't have to be on mountains. You can walk through Letty Park, which is right nearby. You can go to, my kids and I go to Ethan Allen Park sometimes and climb there on the rocks. There's some bouldering there that we'd like to do. We go up to Smuggler's Notch and boulder up there. So there's a lot of, you don't have to have a lot of money to do stuff like this. You can just go out. You can learn how to build debris huts from Native Americans. You can build you can build a sweat lodge, which is another thing I like to do. I like to build sweat lodges in the wintertime. Yeah, those are cool.
Where do you build them?
At friends' houses, and you make a igloo type pattern with the natural materials, dead materials. Then you put a tarp over it, and dig a hole in the center of it. And you heat rocks outside, and you bring the rocks in, and you pour water on them, and you sit in there and you steam. It's really cool. And the best time to do it is when it's snowing. Then you roll out in the snow, get outside naked, roll in the snow, and get back in there again. It's really cool to do that. It's really fun. I try to do that twice a year.
My mother-in-law used to do that in a Scandinavian town. Mm-hmm. She was in her 80s. Yeah. And she loved it.
Yeah, when I was in Finland, the people there have...
That's where it was, Finland.
Yeah, when I was in Finland, I was in Sortavala, and there they have, the saunas are like our living rooms. They've got bookcases with books, and they've got couches and chairs and lamps, and you go in there and you sweat and you read, and you go outside and roll in the snow, and you come back in and read some, and it's a wonder. It makes you feel really cleaned out after a while. You're sweating out toxins, so you get really. And then in the Russian side of that town, these guys would stand up with these birch branches and they'd start whipping themselves with these birch limbs. They believe that the tip of the birch leaf has a medicinal tonic that helps your skin. So that was kind of funny to see these guys stand up and start whipping themselves with tree branches. Like, okay, you don't. I said if you're gonna go into winter mountaineering, yeah, you gotta spend the money. You gotta have really good gear, but you don't need to do all that. For local trips, day trips in the mountains, you really don't need to do that. You can just make sure you have those essential, extra socks and a nice jacket and everything to go out for the day, with extra food and water should you run into a problem. And like I say, certainly let somebody know where you're going and when you're going to be back and what route you're going to be on. So if something does happen, they can get to you pretty quickly. So, there's room for everybody out there. And then as more people spend time in the outdoors, they realize the value of it. And then perhaps we'll have a more concerted effort to preserve it and keep it intact. And like I say, we live in a great area. We got the Long Trail, the oldest hiking trail in the country, in the world, maybe the world. I'm not sure, but that certainly is a jewel in the crown in my view. That is what makes Vermont. And I spend a lot of time on the Long Trail, hiking and skiing.
The Long Trail, what I used to do hiking, it never seemed very rugged. It wasn't like the Adirondacks or the White Mountains. It was more gentle.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
It all depends. Certain stretches, like just on the south face of, for example, when you go from Butler Lodge, which I'm sure you've been on, up to the forehead, just on Mount Mansfield. I mean, there's ladders that you have to climb up, Anchor Point. There's some difficulties there. The area through Glastonbury Mountain's pretty remote. That's down at the start of the trail, down by the Massachusetts border. That's a very remote area. Over Glastonbury Mountain, we're on both sides of the trail. I think you got 12 miles of pure wilderness and nothing else, and people have died in there before. The area around Jay, I don't know. You're right to a certain, there's certain places where the trail's really benign, like for example, just locally, and when you come down off Bamforth Ridge and go back over to Duck Brook, you've got that road you have to walk down route along the river road, Duxbury, to get back to the trail. then it gets rugged again through Bolton and everything. So yeah, to some degree you're right, but there are some places where it's really, really hard, it's really, really nasty, and you have to be really, really careful. So, but I love the long trail. I think it's awesome. And then there's a Catamount Trail for skiing, which is another great trail. And there's stuff in the Adirondacks, there's stuff in the Whites. So there's a lot of. We live in a great. I love being sandwiched between two mountain ranges and having a really nice one right in your backyard to play in.
And something that really intrigues me is that the Adirondacks are going up. They're going
Yeah,
higher.
they're rising. Yeah.
Whereas the Appalachians are going down.
Yeah.
And I've heard that the Adirondacks are part of the Laurentian chain. And the Laurentians are going up.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah, I just recently spent some time, as you know, in the Laurentians.
Yeah.
And it's like a French Vermont. It's very, very, very nice people. It's also, their population in the Laurentians is doubling every 5 years. So in Canada, it's one of the top 3 growing places in their country. And I certainly am glad we have the environmental laws we do here, because they don't seem to apply there. When they want to build a housing development, they just send a bulldozer through the woods, big bulldozer. Take down all the trees, build a road, and they just start building houses. And every year when I go back, I go once a year there to climb. There's more and more new developments with 150 condos here, 250 condos there. And what happens is people are moving in from Montreal with a lot of money and retiring there and building houses, and then they're posting their land with big electric fences and guard dogs. I mean, it's gotten really overzealous. It's gotten a little crazy. So they're safeguarding their property to the nth degree, and it's creating some conflicts. And but it's a beautiful area, really, really beautiful. It'll be gone in 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. It will change its character. It's dotted with ski areas too. I mean, there's a lot of ski areas around. And I'm not saying this is bad or anything. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying this is what's going on there, and I'll have to start going to another place to climb, because the whole purpose for me is to get away from all of that, not to go into it. So to be away from folks, to be isolated, to be in a true wilderness experience, which is getting harder and harder to find, as you know. Of course, there are still certain parts of Maine that are still, like the Allagash, that are still wonderful to go into, because there's hundreds of miles of wilderness there. But and I heard you went to the White Mountains just recently. Yeah.
Just a week ago.
Yeah. And so you're a good example in a sense of you've lost your ability to get around like you used to.
Right.
And yet you're still going there, even isolated. You're going there and getting something from it without immersing yourself in it to the degree that I do. It still has a lot of value for you.
It does.
So that just goes to show you that folks can continue to do that.
Shelburne Health and Fitness Club, they help me regain my strength.
5 minutes.
And also, I'm going to the Fanny Allen. They have a physical therapist who's helping me. Mm-hmm. And I'm learning that you really have to work hard to get your strength back.
Yeah. And we got 5 minutes left. I just want to I challenge the viewership of folks who are watching out there. You don't have to be Edmund Hillary to have.
No.
You don't have to go conquer the summits. You don't have to go climb. But go out and check it out. Please do. I mean, they've got so many wonderful now handicapped accessible, wheelchair accessible sites around everywhere. Mount Mansfield State Park has a wonderful lean-to that's wheelchair accessible. Green River Reservoir has a wonderful handicapped accessible site, a point that goes out to this beautiful, beautiful view of the reservoir. And that's true everywhere. It's really accessible now for everyone. And like I say, you're a shining example of, you're not the physical adventure racing type of person that I am out there in the middle of it, yet you're still going to it. Mm-hmm. And you're still getting a lot out of it. Otherwise, why would you go?
Well, you know, like when I was there, I heard a whole pack of coyotes howling in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
It was wonderful. It
Yeah.
was just wonderful.
yeah, you'll never forget that as long as you...
No, no.
And I mean, the moon that rose last night, did you see that? I mean, it was this big ball coming up over the eastern sky,
Yeah.
and you know, I was in town, you know, here I could enjoy that, you know, and it was free, you know, there it is, you know. So, you know, I talked about, you don't have to, you know, just get briefly exposed to it in any little, go to a state park, walk around after work or whatever. It's worth the trip. It's really, really cool. And then if you really want to get into it, then take classes, read books. I teach a free class through the local community college on how to get ready for winter mountaineering. So there's resources out there to learn how to do the stuff so you can do it in a safe manner. And there's lots of great advice out there, like Outdoor Gear Exchange in Burlington's a wonderful resource. Great staff, Eastern Mountain Sports. You know, starting to sound like a, you know, sponsorship ad here, but there's a lot of local resources that you can take advantage of to learn how to do, how to dress and how to cook and all that stuff. So, and much of what I've learned has just been by trial and error, and mistakes. I've made lots of mistakes. In fact, you know, I'll give you a quick. But I'm surprised that I still like to do this stuff, because when I started doing this, Lee, was with a local Boy Scout troop.
Really?
With a Boy Scout master who was a well-meaning guy, wonderful guy. It was kind of in over his head too. He didn't know what he was doing in a way. Well, we'd go out there with dungarees on and sneakers, and we'd go up on the Mount Mansfield and try to go winter camping. And you know, we've had to call our moms and come get us at the road because we had to bail out because we're freezing to death, and the stove wouldn't work, or we got separated and one party stayed here and another party, you know. So, I mean, I had some hard times, and that's when I decided that I liked it. I liked the hardship of it, and it just, for lack of a better word, it sucked to be out there. I got to learn how to do this the right way so I can really have a good time. And that's what motivated me to go and take classes on my own from other mountaineering guys. And I'm just passing the knowledge down. You know, I learned it from the masters, and I'm just passing it along, you know, keeping the information going. I was taught by a master. I'm passing it along to whoever was interested in hearing about it, because it's a natural enthusiasm for me. It's a natural passion. I love it. Why wouldn't I want to talk about it? Why wouldn't I want to share it with my friends, family, anybody who's interested, the people out there listening to us now? It's a great thing. It's great to go out there. Whether it's July or mid-September or December, it doesn't, you know, it's a wonderful place. This is a wonderful planet.
In my
It's a cool
world,
place.
I would say it's a holy place,
It's a holy place.
really.
And yeah, you do have you do come away with a high degree of reverence for the environment,
For what we've been given.
for what we've been given, and you do start to care about the planet, and you do start to make positive changes.
Thank you, Shane. We've been talking here
Thank
today
you very much.
with
Thanks for having me on
Shane
the show.
Bowie about
Yeah,
mountain climbing and his love of the outdoors.
it's a great thing.
uh,
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, we appreciate. We'd like you to call, but hopefully you'll think about what you've heard. Yeah. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.